Morning, folks. I see several people are just about ready to sign in. We're going to get started here in just about a minute or two as people are discovering, oh my gosh, it's time for the webinar. See
Hey,
more folks are joining. Go
Jim,
ahead,
as
Abby.
as people are logging in, I'd love to know where you're all logging in from, where in the world. As you can tell from my accent, I am not in the US, so it is a beautiful sunny evening here in Newcastle, England. So yeah, drop it in the chat where you signing in from. It'd be cool to see where our audience is from this time.
Oh, good thought.
Okay, got PA. I'm hoping that means something to the American audience.
Pennsylvania, perhaps.
Okay, there we go, Pennsylvania.
I'm waiting
I'm
for
not.
somebody to log in with the attribute from Severance, whatever, wherever that is.
Oh, look at that. We've got
Norway.
Norway and France. Get in. Bonjour, France. Hola, Spain.
Bonjour.
Hi,
Buenos
San Francisco.
tardes. Buenos tardes.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag.
Got a bit of German in there.
If you're joining, we're going to get started here in just about a minute. We're letting folks trickle in as they discover that the gong has
Ooh,
hit.
100
Oh,
degree F. Oh, Gene.
yeah.
That's hot.
Oh, poor Gene.
It's not that sunny here in Newcastle, just to put that into perspective. We are not at 100 plus. Ooh.
Oh, oh. Well, more folks still coming in.
Aha, Dublin, get in. The Irish are here.
Outstanding. At least it's a dry heat, as someone said. All right. It's 1 minute past the top of the hour. Delhi, India. Good morning, good day, I should say. Good evening, actually. We're going to get started here with our topic today. We have well over 170 people signed up to attend today. And Abby is a good friend of mine and co-chair of last year's summit 2025 for AnDOUC. Yes, please, the next slide, Abby. She's reading
Sorry,
my
my
mind.
bad, my bad.
No, 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 no. You're wonderful. So today we have Abby speaking on From Container to Insight, Oracle Machine Learning and 23 AI. I've looked through her slides already. Fascinating topic, but we want to remind you that we have an enormous amount of collateral, as I like to call it, out here. All of these videos and slides, as we get them, are added almost immediately after the presentation. And we have shifted over to YouTube, so people don't necessarily have to register. Yeah, so next slide, please. The big thing we want to tell you about is what's coming up next month. We have secured 4 key panelists from Oracle to tell you if you have plans on attending Oracle AI World. I'm sure that caused absolutely no ruckus over at Oracle, changing that, what, 6 weeks ahead of time. If you remember last year, suddenly 2 weeks before, 23C became 23AI. So Oracle's at least planning a little bit further ahead, but it's AI World this year. We have secured 4 wonderful speakers, including Maria Colgan, Mark Hornick, Keith Laker, and Brett Grinslade, all VPs or product managers, distinguished product managers, to help you figure out if you're attending or if you have colleagues attending, where they should spend their time. So that's next month. One more slide, please, I think. The big thing we want to remind you is you can reach out to us anywhere on AnDOUC. We have several different sites. Our website, of course, andouc.org. I mentioned our YouTube channel. Also, we're on Blue Sky, if you didn't know that. And of course, LinkedIn. We get a lot of buzz on LinkedIn, and also our Slack channel. We do have an open Slack channel. If you have questions after this would be a great place to go ahead and reach out with us to us. One more slide, and then it's over to Abby. Uh, we want to remind you, Summit 2026 is coming next April. We'll be at the old Oracle headquarters, legacy headquarters, I guess we could call it. We had an amazing conference last year. I'm sorry, I keep embedding pictures of Abby and me into this, but we had an amazing cohort of younger students. We're hoping to have that again this coming April. But for right now, we need content. We want to see your papers. Please submit. The call for papers is open, and we have some amazing presentations already on list, but we want more. So please reach out, and more importantly, save the date. This is kind of like those wedding invitations we get. Do we get those in the UK, Abby? Do
We do
we send
indeed.
out?
Yep. Save the
Okay,
date has
yeah,
now moved it across to the pond.
good, good. We finally did something right. Anyway, Abby, over to you. It's time for Abby to talk. I want to just introduce her briefly as my co-chair from Summit 2025, a good friend of mine, also a fellow Oracle ACE director, and data scientist, which is amazing, and database administrator, right, Abby? I
Yep.
remember your history. Um,
Yep.
Over to you.
Awesome. Okay, so Jim's going to keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A sections wherever you want to post. So if you see something during the presentation, you think, I really want to know a bit more about that, drop it in the chat. Me and Jim will kind of work through the presentation and try and answer those questions as we go along. The other thing is, instead of doing this all by video, instead I've chosen to do it by images and talk you through it. With all of the code is going to be available in the slides at the end. The reason being is if you want to follow this through later on, you can take the slides and you can follow through rather than getting confused, having to write down that code halfway through the presentation. So essentially, I'm giving you permission to kick back, drink a beer if you're in India, UK, France, Germany, Dublin. If you're in the US, maybe grab an extra coffee. This is your time just to do that. Okay, quick introductions. Abi Giles-Haigh. So my background is computing in terms of computational modeling of the human heart. That's what my PhD is in. So essentially using AI to do computer models of the human heart and understand and be able to predict when certain arrhythmias were going to happen in the heart using machine learning. Came out of my PhD, didn't know what to do with my life. I became a junior database administrator in an Oracle database, and that's how I essentially learnt an Oracle database from the ground up. So tables, security, all the good stuff that looks after our data. From there, I did join the NHS, where I became a data scientist. And I was part of a quite a good story with the NHS, where we found just over 1.2 billion pounds of reoccurring savings for the NHS using data. A credible team there. They're still doing that work today, and they bring incredible and invaluable insights to our medical teams here in the UK. After that, I went into the private sector, into banking. So I'd done anti-money laundering and fraud analytics. And now I'm in the consulting world, so helping businesses get more from AI and do it in a way that's really kind of helpful, but also secure and also has the human involved. Human in the loop is a big area that we're talking about in terms of ethics, equality, all those good stuff. More importantly, I'm an ACE director. So if you've not heard about the ACE program, there's probably a few people on the call who are ACEs, but it's a program where we are passionate about helping others get more from the Oracle technology. But equally, I see myself as someone who holds Oracle up to what they say it does. So if they say it's got a feature, you're gonna bet I'm gonna go and test that feature and make sure it works because the community wants to know that it does work. And if it doesn't, be able to have that dialogue with the product managers and kind of understand the journey on why that feature's in there and how to use it, etc. But yeah, what I'm most passionate about is helping people get the most out of their Oracle technology. And that kind of gets us to today's presentation. So I have been using Oracle machine learning now inside the database since I was at the NHS. So it's about 10, 12 years now. that I've been using OML. And lots of people forget that OML's in there and they're like, you can't do machine learning in a database. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Oracle, you can. So we've got lots of algorithms inside the database that you can take advantage of, and especially with the new 23 AI, the fact that spatial graph are inside there now and are kind of wedded together, if you like. So you've got your relational data, you've got your JSON data, you've got your graph data, you've got your spatial data all in one place, and that you can move between them because they're all first-party products, and you can essentially do a select from them. It makes it so much easier. Now, what inspired this talk is that last couple of years I haven't done an introduction to OML, but this year I brought it back out of the retirement and did a few sessions on introduction to Oracle machine learning. Lots of people got involved in those sessions, loved it, didn't realize their database could do it. But biggest question I had at the end is, how can I get started with Oracle machine learning? And I was like, huh, interesting. Not thought about that option. And usual answer would be go get some crowd credits, go and try it out on the autonomous database, etc., and do it that way. But a few people were saying, oh, but my work will allow me to do that, or I want to do it on my laptop, I want to be able to take it with me. And I thought, okay, well, let's try and do this in Docker containers instead. But also it's free, it's on your laptop, you could be off the internet, but still doing your work. So that's what inspired this talk. And essentially, we're going to go from nothing to full working Oracle machine learning. But more than that, we're also going to pick up on Python. Why Python? In terms of the recent research, in terms of DevOps, the top language in DevOps is JavaScript, but the third top language is Python. Number 9 is SQL, and they are two major components of this presentation. If you're going down the machine learning data science route, your top language is Python at the minute, and the third most required language in data science is currently SQL. So if you think of this from a career progression, in terms of DevOps, if you're a developer and you're coming from that space, Python and SQL, third and ninth. And if you're going in the data science route, Python number 1, SQL number 3. So really, these are two very hot areas in terms of career development as well. So that's kind of why I've put them all together and kind of bring it to life for people. So let's get started. If you've not heard of Docker, essentially it's a container. It's a containerized platform, so ensuring that they run the same way across different environments. So it means if we build a container on this laptop, I could pass that container to Jim, Jim's would work. I could pass it up to the cloud and it would work in the cloud. It's just a container, and inside that container, it all works. It's lightweight, it's fast, and it usually is a little bit quicker than your traditional virtual machines. Really portable. So to give you an example, I've used it in businesses. So if we need to do something where we don't have any internet connections, some of you might be aware I do a lot of football coaching, a lot of football analysis. We do not have a Wi-Fi signal in the middle of a soccer pitch. It just doesn't happen. You'll be stood in the very wet soccer pitch with no Wi-Fi, trying to do analysis, and you require a database to do it. Then I can put it into a Docker container and have it on my laptop in the middle of a soccer pitch. However, I can then move that Docker image back onto a cloud when I get back onto internet, and it's happy days. So it's great. But how do you get started with it? So first and foremost, in your kind of terminal, or if you're on Windows terminal, you're going to put docker pull container-registry.oracle.com/database/free latest. That latest is going to pull you the latest 23 AI version of the database that is available in Docker. So that's super crucial. We use that last bit here. But essentially that's what that's pulling. So it's going to find the latest Oracle image, it's going to pull it down and add it into Docker. So that's what it looks like if I put it into my terminal. As you can see, I'm a proper old school girl. I like to have a dark background and my funny looking text. My other half likes to give me grief for this, but that's what it looks like. Once you've got it into there, you can then do docker run --name Oracle 23C AI. So this is the name of the container. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. Name of the container. Then we're going to allow it to open up some ports here. And we're going to come back to that in a second. Oracle password. So this is the password of your sysadmin for your database. Make sure you put your password here. If you want to use speech marks, don't. Just an FYI, don't. There are certain special characters that are just really not a good idea when we're doing Oracle passwords. But make sure you have capitals, lowercase, numbers, special character, things like that. We're telling it a specific character set to use, and then we're going to pull the container down, and it's our latest one that we're going to use the latest one we've just pulled down. So what it's doing is essentially creating a container called Oracle 23CA AI, and it's going to have ports 1521 and 5500 open. And make sure you put that password in. That's what it looks like in the script. And once it's run, you're going to need 3 main commands to run Docker. Stop, start, remove. Remember, if you do remove Docker, it's going to delete your database. It's going to disappear. Stop and start, everything will be saved in the database, but the Docker will just stop. So it stops using the memory, etc., etc. If you want to start it up again, you put start -docker start Oracle 23C AI. And again, if you have finished with the database, you want to remove it, removing Docker RM Oracle 23i. So this is the code, Docker stop Oracle, Docker start, Docker RM. So stop, start, remove. That is your Docker completed. Now, I saw a few questions come up in the chat. So Jim, I'm going to pause. Was there anything specific to Docker in those questions? Ooh. Okay, got a few questions. You can use Podman. Yes, you can. Docker is blocked by Oracle. I cannot use Docker. Yep, so Podman's the alternative. So if you are a Docker person and you ever see some script in GitHub, etc., you can alias Docker to be Podman. So if the GitHub's saying Podman, blah, 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 then you can do, you can alias Docker to mean Podman. But equally, all of this code just replace Docker with Podman, and it's essentially exactly the same. So all the same. So I hope that helps. Okay, next step. We've now got Docker running. We've now got a database running, and I am a DBA. So the first thing I'm going to do is go and get SQL Developer. So you hopefully have all seen this before. If you've not, you can download the latest version from this URL. And essentially, SQL Developer 23.3.1 was the latest edition as of last night. I literally put that in last night. And you can see there it was released on the 16th of December 2024. This is what it looks like when it opens up, when you start it up. What we need to do is now connect SQL Developer to our Docker. Okay, so Docker's running. We've done start Docker and it's all running. The database is there. And remember, if I go back a couple of slides, when we set it up, we had an Oracle Docker. It's going to be called 23C AI. We were putting a password in. Now, what you didn't see was what's the username. So what we're setting up when we do this is the sysadmin, okay? And that password is your sysadmin password to the database. So when we connect with SQL Developer, username is sys. We're going to tell SQL Developer that it's a sysdba role. There's the password. So that red text you're going to put into here. And in the connection type, it's going to be basic. And you can see here, there's that port 1521. We opened it up. And service name, because this is the free Docker image from Oracle, it's called free PB1 DB1. Okay. When you've done that, I would recommend pressing test first, make sure it connects. Once you've done it though, don't just quickly connect and just press connect, save it. It will add it to your connection list for later, okay? So I'll just walk you through that one more time because this is a really crucial step. Give it a name. So in this case, I'm calling it the admin. You're connecting with the username sys. It's going to be the sysdba role. You put your password in. Your port is 1521 and the service name is freepdb1. Test it, save it, you'll be connected. Okay, I'm going to go back because I can tell from the chat we have some more questions. Q&A, folks. Cool, cool, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Question, Abby was, Mahendran had a question. Docker is blocked by Oracle. I cannot use Docker within the Oracle network. Is there an
Yeah.
alternative?
So I think we had the discussion about Podman. Podman, I believe, is opened by Oracle. Instead of using Docker, just change all the words that are Docker to Podman and you will be fine. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. Good, good. Okay, super. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Back to
So
you.
now then, we don't really want to be doing all of this work as the sys user. Now, you could do it as sys user, absolutely you could, and you've got super privileges as a sys DBA in there, so you could do it that way. But it would be far better and we better practice if we created a database user or a schema to do this work in. So what we're going to do is create a user called Kaggle underscore user, and it's going to be identified by, and this is where you're going to put a password in for the Kaggle user. Okay, we're going to grant connect DBA sessions. We're going to give it unlimited table space and it can create views, procedures, sequences, triggers, and they're all assigned to Kaggle user. So essentially in this first set of code, you are setting up a user to go and do your data science or your machine learning. Now I've called it Kaggle user. You could change it to anything else. You probably gives you a guess of where I've got the data for our example today, but it's just a really nice, simple way. Now, that creates the user and gives them a schema inside the database. We also need to give them a few other privileges, and we want them to be able to create tables, create views. We want them to be able to alter tables, alter procedures, triggers, delete any tables, drop any procedures, drop any views. Why? If you create a machine learning model, it becomes an object within the database. You want to be able to alter it, delete it, drop it, create a new one. So you need to have these privileges as that user who's going to be doing the machine learning. So once we've logged in as the sysadmin person, you're essentially creating the Kaggle user with all of these privileges. Now that gets you to the more advanced user setup. So you've got your basic setup on the first slide, the more advanced one, but these are the specific ones for Oracle machine learning that you need to put in. So we've got grant create mining model to Kaggle user. So that's creating a machine learning model. You can select those models, you can alter those models, you can drop those models, you can add a comment. Think about this in terms of what does that model do? So you can add a comment to the model. You could, we're also going to add audit admin. So if we want to look at the audit, so when were the models changed, when were comments added, when was it created? That's that audit admin. And we want to, this last bit is the DDL just allows us to do an explanation of the models when we get that as well. So if we think about it in steps, the first step is basic setup a user. Second step is giving that user some control. We can figure out what they need to do, but these are the basic commands to get us going. And then that user is going to be a data scientist, a machine learning model expert. So therefore they need the mining model ones. So 3 steps, 3 lots of privileges given to this user, Kaggle user. Okay. Once we've created that, we now want to log in as Kaggle user through SQL Developer. So exactly the same as we did with our sysadmin, we're going to call it Kaggle user. I've just given it a user name. There's our username, Kaggle user. Here's the password, so that red text again. This time, check out what role I've given it. I've just said default. So whereas before we were telling it was a sysdba, this time it's just a default user. I'm going to save the password and everything else is the same. So it's the local host 1521 and it's the free database. Again, save it before you then connect into the database. If you've got all of that right, we're into the Kaggle section. All right, I'm going to pause. Jim, any questions on setting up a user inside the database?
Just one real quickly from y'all. I hope I'm saying that right. If they have access to OCI ADB, could I
Oh,
use
wow.
autonomous DB instead of 23 AI on Docker? I said, sure, but would you like to augment that?
So if you've got access to the autonomous, you may have the ADW. So if you've got a cloud account, especially, you can actually access the 23 AI autonomous, yeah, ADW for the free version, the developer version on cloud. So you could do it that way. When you do that, instead of having to do all of these grants, the, it's really easy in the cloud. You just press a toggle and tell it that you want an OML user, and it essentially does all of this code
Um,
for you. So you don't
yeah.
have to do that. The only reason I'm having to do this step is essentially when I pull that image down from Docker into Docker, it's a blank database. There's nothing in it. So we need to set up a user in there. If you're doing it on the ADW on cloud, like I say, it's just a little toggle and essentially it's doing all of that for you and you don't have to worry about that step. It's a lot easier.
Mhm. One other question just popped up. How to deal with SE Linux, especially when using the OS path instead of a volume. I think this is specific to security situations.
Ooh, yes, it is. That
Yeah.
one I'm going to take offline and if we can
Okay.
grab who it is, because that's going to
All
need a
right.
longer explanation.
Okay, sounds good. We'll save it for the end and we'll
Yeah,
go from
we'll go
there.
through that. Yeah, cool.
I'll
Thanks,
let
Jim.
them know. You got it.
Okay, so at this point, we've now essentially got two users set up. We've got our sysadmin user and we've got our Kaggle user. We're going to stay in our Kaggle user, and now we're going to do one of the Kaggle competitions that's available. So if you've never heard of Kaggle, Kaggle is like where data scientists go to play. This is like my idea of a great Friday night. If you gave me a beer and Kaggle, you've lost me. Like, there's not a chance you're getting me. Apart from maybe a soccer game. That's about the only way you're going to break me. If you go to this link here, kaggle.com/competition/Titanic, Titanic competition on Kaggle is like the entry one. So anyone can do it. You just sign up for Kaggle. It's completely free, and you will see this competition here. And what you'll see along the top here, that you'll see overview, data, code, models, discussion, leaderboard, etc. It's really interesting if you're new to machine learning, data science, and you want to learn like how do I optimize models, how do I kind of enhance them and stuff. The discussion board on this Titanic one is fantastic for ideas. Equally though, they have lots of Python code sat in this code one that you can do. But we're going to show how you can solve the Titanic machine learning problem from Kaggle, but in Oracle machine learning. Okay, so we go here, we're going to download the data. And the first step we're going to need to do is upload that to SQL into our database. So in our Kaggle user, I've gone into my Kaggle schema and I've right-clicked on tables and I've said import data, and you'll get presented to this screen. So I've directed this to my downloads Titanic train. So when you download the data, you're going to get two files. You're going to get training data and you're going to get test data. I apologize if my voice is breaking a little bit at this point. So here we're going to upload the train CSV to SQL Developer. And I'm just telling it it's a CSV format. And you can see here it's got the passenger ID, it's got survived, P class, name, sex, age, sibling, etc. If you've never seen this competition before, essentially what we're trying to do is a machine learning model to predict who would survive the Titanic. So that's the ones, and who would not, the zeros. If you were in the fraud world, you could consider fraud not fraud, and it's a classification problem. So that's the data that we're going to use. So we do this, we'll hit next a few times, and eventually that data will load. And we can select it all from our database and we'll be able to see it. So that's how you get to this stage. But I said it was a classification problem. And I also said there's a lot of Oracle machine learning data, algorithms in the database, and there is. I mean, this slide's quite old, and probably doesn't cover even the newest stuff in 23 AI. But just from the old version, you can see that there's lots. So where we're going to focus today is this classification area, but you've got clustering, anomaly detection, time series, etc. So clustering, I always give the example of if I'm in the soccer arena and I'm doing the transfer market at the minute, and say somebody turns around to me and says, I need to find players that are similar to Lauren Barnes at Seattle. Can you find me all the players who are similar to Lauren Barnes at Seattle? And I would be able to take lots of attributes of Lauren Barnes and find players who would appear in the same cluster as Lauren. And you would get that kind of picture. Clustering is also used for shopping. So shopping habits. I might be. I like to buy like cheap, cheerful presents for people, whereas my other half likes to buy expensive, unique gifts. We would be in different clusters of shopping habits. Anomaly detection. So if you've got data and you need to be able to clean it up, you want to be using the anomaly detection. Time series forecasting, so being able to predict sales into the future, things like that. Attribute importance, so what things are important to our discoveries. So essentially, looking at that area. And then text mining, so tokenizing, semantic analysis of positive and negative language, etc. That is just a glimpse into the world of Oracle machine learning. And all of this is inside the database. So we're going to do one of these classification ones. The reason I'm not going to take you through all of this is once you know the menu and how it works, it's really easy to do any of these ones. Okay, so we're going to go classification and we're going to do a decision tree classification model today. So how did I even select that? Remember, because we've got all of these models, we have to think about what are we trying to solve. In this case, we're trying to solve who survived and who did not survive the Titanic. And that, therefore, is a classification. You're either A or you're B. So it's quite a simple decision at that point that we're going to be in this top left-hand corner. If it was something like, I want to know the standard deviation from X, it would be down in here. We'd be looking at the statistical functions. So it's always brings it back to what is the business problem you're trying to solve, and then find the right machine learning model to fit that problem. So yes, it looks overwhelming, and you might well look like our friend here, but just take a step back, think about what is the business problem you're trying to solve, and then it'll narrow down which machine learning model you need to use. So in this case, we're going to use supervised because we've got labels, we've got ones and zeros. So that means that we can be in the classification. If it doesn't have labels, you're in the unsupervised. A little bit harder. You look at it, anomaly detection and clustering. But we're going to stick with the easy one today, which is the supervised. So essentially, what we've got is input data, so our training data in this case. We've got our partially labeled. So what that means is um, we might have some label data that's not full in description. So in our case, we've just got one set of data to learn from. In some scenarios, you might have some partial, but actually in this scenario, we've just got input data. So we've got all of the data to train from and got ones and zeros. And we're going to pass it into a machine learning model that's going to learn those patterns. And then we're going to show it the test data that comes from Kaggle. And we're then going to help it make a prediction of it's an apple. And hopefully we're successful. So what we're going to do is train on our train.csv. We're going to create the Oracle machine learning model inside the database. We're then going to give it the test data, and we're going to make some predictions, and we're going to see how well those predictions have done. Okay? So how do we do that? First and foremost, when we train a model, we often want to split it into train and test data. So even though I have a test data set, I've brought it into a real world scenario, which is you would typically in the business have a set of data, and you would want to take that data and split it into a training set and a test set. Why? we can all be brilliant people and say it's 100% blah, blah, blah. I never believe it until I test it against the data set that the model has never seen. You may even go as far as having a training set, a test set, and a validation data set. So the validation data set is never seen by the data science team at all and is actually held out for the test team or the deployment team. And the data scientists only get the train, the test. So we're going to imagine we're a data scientist, we've got a data set, we're going to split it into train and test. So we're only ever using the train.csv file that we've uploaded. We're taking that table, we're going to split it 80% test, 80% train and 20% test. Now, really simple bit of code to do that. So we're going to create or replace a view called train data underscore kg as select star from kg Titanic train. So kg Titanic train was the CSV that we uploaded into the database. And in this case, I've asked it to sample, and 60% of that table is going to go into that view. Now I've added one extra piece of code at the end, so seed 123. What that means is if I do this again and I provide it the same seed number, the same sample would go into that view. At the bottom, I've then created the test data. So again, just imagine in the business, you've only got one data set. We need a test data set of that data that is not going to be shown to the machine learning model, but is actually going to be tested against. So we're going to create or replace a view test data kg, where we select star from kg Titanic train minus from the rest of the data. So from the rest of from the train data that we've just created here. So we're going to go and get anything in here that is not in our train data we just created. All right, so if we run those two things, we'll get a script output that looks like this. Okay, so at this point, we've now created our train data, which is here. So train data underscore kg, and our test data, our test underscore data underscore kg. So we've got our base point for training the model. So essentially, if we go back, we've created our input data, we've created our unlabeled data, and we're now going to go and create our machine learning model. Okay, so the first things we are going to do is we have our menu. We're going to set up our menu with this v underscore set list. And v underscore set list is essentially telling it what ingredients to put in to create the model. So prep auto on is essentially going to deal with any kind of problems with the data. So it's a magic wand, if you like, that you can wave over the data. So what does that mean? If it sees a column that's null, sorry, a value that's null in a row, and there's lots of other values in that column, it will take the mean and place it in instead of the null. That's pretty cool when you think about it, because instead of me having to go through every row and every column and deal with the nulls, etc., Prep Auto deals with it for me. It's good to a certain extent. Be careful if you are working in an area where those nulls could actually give you insight into the problem. So things like fraud analytics, that's a bad area to do that proper Prep Auto, because that null could be the very thing that you need to solve the fraud case. So just be a little bit careful with that. Other things that it'll do is in some of the algorithms that you can use, you need to do what's called one-hot encoding. It handles that for you as well. So again, just use it with a little bit of caution, but it is an incredibly powerful statement. And the next setting that I'm going to tell it, so essentially I've put that ingredient in. The next one I'm going to put in is which algorithm do I want to use? So just going back to our list. Here in the classification, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different classification models we could use inside the machine learning model. And we just want to use decision tree. So what we're telling it in that one line is use the algorithm decision tree. And you can imagine algo underscore neural underscore network is a neural network algorithm. It doesn't take rocket science to figure this out, but I'm telling it which algorithm to use. Then I want to create the model itself. So I'm going to use this DBMS function here called create_model2. Really ingenious, they called it model2. There was an old version of this function called, guess what? Create_model. The new version of it's called create_model2. We tell them, who am I? I give the model a name. So it's going to be DT, decision tree, KG, Kaggle, model. I am, what kind of model mining function am I? What do I do? I'm a classification model. Data query. So where am I getting that data from? Where do I come from? So I'm going to select everything from our train_data_kg view that we created at the start. How do I map it back? Like, what's the primary key? What's the case ID? In this case, it's passenger ID, but it could be a fraud, it could be a transaction number, etc., etc. Then I'm telling it the ingredients list, so set list, why I'm needed, and then the target column, so which one am I, where's my label? How do I know it's ones or zeros? And it's going to be the survived column. And then I'm closing that function off with an end here. So putting it all together, and if we run this, so we begin, here I'm being a good data scientist, and if I've run it before, I'm dropping the model. And then I declare my settings list. I begin by prepping, putting my ingredients in, and then I run it to create my model. And if it runs successfully, you'll get a little PL SQL procedure successfully completed. Congratulations, you just became a data scientist and created your first machine learning model. What does that actually create under the hood? So we can look at the attributes of that model. So we can select from user mining model attributes where the model name is DTKG model, and we can look at all of the attributes and the attribute types. So these are the data attributes that have gone into that model. So age, fair, parchment, sex, siblings, survived, and it gives you the type at the right-hand side. But we can go one step further, so we can ask it, tell me about the user mining model in here. So if I've got lots of models, I just wouldn't put the where clause in and I could see all of the models. And when we run that for our model, we can see that it's a classification model, that it's a decision tree, when it was created, whether it's partitioned. And remember, I gave you at the beginning, you can add comments. If you wanted, you could add a comment to this user mining models and add a comment to it. So if you think of this in terms of model management and looking after these models in the future or doing an audit on these models, when was it created? By who? What's it for? What data does it use? Here are the key bits of SQL you need to be able to do that model management. The last part of that model management or the auditing of models is what are the settings? What were the ingredients in the menu that were put into creating that model? And we can get that through user mining model settings, and we can get the setting names. So here you can see algorithm was a decision tree. It had a maximum number of bins of 32. And you'll be probably looking at this going, well, Abby, you didn't put all of those settings into the menu. Correct, I didn't. I essentially just picked out two that I wanted to make sure were specific. And you always have to specify which algorithm name. And then after that, the settings themselves, you can alter. So I could have put class_max_sub_bins, and instead of allowing it to have 32 as the maximum, I could have cut it down to 12. So you can really start to look at the hyperparameters of the model, and all you would do is you add them to your VSet list, to your menu that you're adding in. If you don't put them in, it will just default to the default list, and essentially that's what you're seeing here on the right hand side. So that's our model. That's what it's created under the hood. That it's an actual object you can query, you can find out, you can audit, you can look after it, you can add comments to it. The next step is that we want to apply our data model that we've just created, our little machine learning model, onto our test data. So we're going to use another function, and we're using the apply function. We're going to take our model, DTKG model, so the model we want to apply it this time to the test data that we created. Remember that view that we created. Tell it where the primary key is, which was passenger ID. And where do I want the results saved? So here it's going to create me a new table that says that's called apply underscore result underscore kg. So that's where we're going to store our results. So two functions so far, which is create the model and then we apply the model. So far, so good. Last part is, well, how good was it? Like, we created this machine learning model, but actually, how good was it? Enter stage right something called a confusion table. So a confusion table or confusion matrix is where survived, not survived. So if I predicted someone survived but they didn't, I would be a false. And you can have false positives and false negatives. I'm just going to call it false for now. If I predicted not survived and they survived, that would be false. If I predicted survived and they did survive, that would be a true. So you can see we can do a matrix of this. So what we've got here is select survived as actual target value. Then we're using our model, we're predicting, and then we're going to count how many times we got it right or wrong. Okay? And there should be an image, and it has not appeared. Okay. I will get that updated on the slides. Essentially, that creates you the confusion matrix. So at this point, in our database, we have created our first ever machine learning model. We've done it from trained test data, we've created a model, we've applied the model, and then we've tested how well it is. Now, I said there were two primary languages I wanted to look at, and that's because the second one is Python. Now, hopefully, at this stage, we've got a few people on the call that have not switched off completely and we're entering stage right Python. So we're still going to use the database, but we're going to pull the data from the database into Python. And you're probably thinking, why on earth would I want to do that? As a data scientist, you need to be able to do both skills, so it'd be really cool if we could bring them all into one place. There are these fantastic packages, and the ones I'm going to pull in today is the CX Oracle, which is handling the connection to the database, and then Pandas is your usual data frame area. Oop. So in here, the real Python's here, but I'm just kind of putting it here. So we're telling it it's an Oracle. The SQL driver is the Oracle database, and that my username is Kaggle user. And then you put your password. So remember the bit in red, you would put your password here. The host is localhost. So remember when we did SQL developer and the screen, it was localhost 1521 3PDB1. There's a lot of similarities, and that's why I've kind of taken you along this journey. And essentially, in this engine path, all we're putting together is all of these pieces of information into one string that is going to create the engine path. And this engine path, we're going to create the engine or the connection into the database. So the reason I've taken you on this journey of downloading it, creating your password, creating your user, putting it in SQL Developer is it's exactly the same in Python. There's absolutely no difference. Once you've got the engine set up, you can do a test query. So here I'm importing pandas to put it into a data frame, pandas data frame. So Kaggle data frame is I'm going to read SQL query. So it's a SQL query. Select star from my Titanic train using that engine that I've just created, that connection. And then I'm going to display the first 5 rows, the head of it. And here, just like we did in the SQL developer, but we're in Python. From there, you can then pick up any of the Python code from Kaggle itself, and you will be away doing it in there as well. But what you have managed to do is put it all into one cool environment where you're doing SQL and Python, and you can really bring your skills together. That's what I mean by the code, so you can look and filter out for Python and look at the tutorials in there. Why am I doing this? Key features. It's comprehensive machine learning algorithms, OML. You can do it in the database. If you're on the autonomous database, there is the automated AutoML as well, so they do a model tuning, scalable and secure. So once you've learnt your skills here, you can go and do it somewhere else as well, and you scale up. And it's pretty easy to do. I've taught you the menu to do OML. So hopefully you've got everything you need to get started in OML. And Docker is a great way to get started. As I said, Python and SQL, some of the top skills needed in the careers context at the minute. Hopefully, this is a cool way for you to get started using both of them at the same time, and you can see how transferable they are between the two environments. Jim, are there any more questions? I'm well over time, I know I am.
No, you're right on schedule, Abby, because we took some of the questions there. One question came in from Jugji. Yeah, there will be a recording for this, by the way. We'll
Cool.
have it out on YouTube later today. So we've taken care of that. But I did want to ask a different question from Sanoop. In a real world customer scenario, how do you usually handle data visibility? Are customers open to sharing their data for model training? Or do you rely more on synthetic data? We hear about that a lot
Ooh.
in the
Mhm.
AI world, don't we? To train the models.
Okay, so very much depends. If you are in an environment where it's really hard to synthesize the data, so I'm talking like fraud analytics, for example, less than 1% of transactions in the world are actually fraudulent. So simulating that and doing synthetic data is incredibly difficult. Even if you have the profile of the data to get to that nuance of having 1% that is essentially what you're trying to find, the needle in the haystack, that can be really difficult. In that scenario, you might want to look at things like pseudonymization, where essentially I've done it before at the NHS where I had to we wrote a special pseudonymization algorithm that locks the data, so I couldn't work out who it was, where they were, etc., etc. But all of that data could then be passed into the algorithm and it would still train on the data as long as the data remained in the pseudonymized fashion because then you could apply it back again onto it. The downside of that is you don't then find out who the real person is under the hood. So that can't always be used. Now, inside the Oracle database, you do have a lot of encryption and redaction. Those could be your keys to this. If you redact the data and you redact it in the same format across all tables, across all schemas, and you combine the data together, you should, in theory, and check with your DBA before you do all this, you should be able to pass it into your machine learning model. And again, because it's redacted, you can't see the actual data, but because it's redacted in the same way, in the same methodology, it's fine then when you apply back the machine learning model. So those are two ways. In terms of synthetic data, if it's not super secure, like fraud, for example, or it's an area like HR, finance, etc., where you tend to have quite good cadences in data, so you have quite a good trend going on. There are lots of tools now to create synthetic data based on the profile of the data. So it picks up those trends and reflects it into the synthetic data. Then train your machine learning model in a different environment, off-site, wherever, and then bring the model back again. It is possible, but it depends on which domain you work in, which is the data appropriate for synthetic data. There are quite a lot of, but I guess the answer is there's lots of options available.
By the way, we had a new question. Our OCI instance has OML and Oracle Data Science. Which one would be preferred? Key point, if we want to tie it into Oracle Apex applications. Great question.
Ooh, okay. I would my tendency would to be go with Oracle Machine Learning if you're going to be using Apex because it all then remains inside the database and therefore you can have consistent security across. So it's a lot easier. Having said that, now in the Oracle database, depending on your database version, 23 AI, for example, you can now import Onyx models to the database. Now, what's an Onyx model? Okay,
Yes.
quick overview of Onyx models. If you're in Python, there's an open network that created something called Onyx. It was originally created for neural networks, but essentially what it allows us to do is train a model and create it a bit like an executable. That's the best way I can describe it, and package it all up. That little packaged up version of that model can then be imported into our database. So instead of the data then going out to Python and back in again, it stays inside the database and we can call that Onyx model from the database. So we can call that machine learning model. So we might have trained it in Python and then created the executable and imported it into the database and run it inside the database. And then you can keep your essentially keep all your kind of good practices, security, etc. Which one to choose was the question. So would I
Right.
naturally I would move towards Oracle Machine Learning because it's inside the database, it's scalable, it's secure, I can put all my security. However, there's a lot of advantages to the data science platform in OCI, such as being able to visualize data, use Python packages. We've just read it's the number one language in data science, so that's why where data scientists live. They live in Python. There's nothing wrong with taking an extraction of the data to start looking, investigating, understanding the data, questioning the data. Where can I enhance the data? That's what you can use that for. As you scale, and depending on how big your system is it enterprise, is it global, how many transactions are going through, might then determine where you keep running that executable. It could be in an OCI VM, and you could take it from data science and run it on a VM, and the database calls it, or you could move it across to the database and do it in the database. I guess the answer is Oracle's got really super flexible ways, and it's not just about the technology anymore. The technology's caught up. It can do lots of things. It then becomes what are the people's skills and what are the processes you have in place within your business that will enable machine learning to go from simple POC through to production, enabling the business and then use the technology in the right way.
Great answer. Great answer. Could you move on to our last few slides,
Of
please? Because I think your
course.
contact information is there as well. And
Yeah.
I have posted your email addresses into the chat, Abby, by the way, but
Yeah.
also,
So I'm part of Capgemini as a day job. I'm the Analytics and Innovation Director at Capgemini. So from a commercial perspective, happy to help there. I've also put my personal one on there. I am doing this as an ACE director. I do help people with questions and ideas and things like that. But equally, I also love chatting to people about cool things in like sport or especially soccer. You've probably heard me say it a few times. So feel free just to drop me an email on my personal account. But Twitter and LinkedIn as well. I'm also always open for mentoring, a quick chat. How do I get in the ACE program? Things like that. Just feel free to drop me a message.
awesome. And I think we have just a couple more slides left. We have some interesting information about analytics in general because it's our first two letters, AnDOUC. So please take a look there. Also, one last couple of slides, Abby, if you would. We already mentioned this. If you joined us late, next time on the 18th of September, we're going to have four, at least four, because we have other AnDOUC luminaries who will also be attending. If you have colleagues that are going to I'm sorry, Oracle AI World 2025, not Open AI World, that would be somebody else. We will be having Maria Colgan, Mark Hornick, and other luminaries from Oracle giving us advice on where your colleagues should be attending. One last slide, I think. We also wanted to promote, save the date for AnDOUC Summit 2026. Abby is, by the way, the chair of Summit 2026. So she's extremely busy, but still wanted to take time today to talk about all these great topics. And one last thing I did want to mention, I had our TechCast link up earlier, one of the slides at the very beginning. Abby, you mentioned Onyx. the loading the Onyx models into the database. If you go back to November 7th of 2024, somebody did a presentation called Give Me a Vector, Victor, and it actually shows how to load those Onyx models into just grab the 2024 tab, obviously, which we can't do here live. And if you want to take a look at that, by the way, this is where later today, you should see the entry for August 21st. This is where the video and the PDF, all the Abi slides, you will be able to download them. But I think that pretty much wraps it up for this episode, this session. Abi, outstanding job. Isn't it nice to have a real world data scientist, folks, actually telling us what to do? That's amazing. Anything
I
you'd like
hope
to add?
No, I
Go
hope
ahead, Abi.
everyone have the tools to get started, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what people end up doing it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, folks. Thank you for attending today. Wonderful to see you all there. Excellent questions. We really appreciate your time, and we will see you next time. Remember, the luminaries will be here. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.